All right, here we go with chapter 10. Last chapter, Jonas got his rules and instructions as the new receiver of memory. And we're going to see what happens now. So we are on chapter 10, and that is on page 91. Here we go. I go in here, Jonas, Fiona told him when they reached the front door of the House of the Old after parking their bicycles in the designated area. I don't know why I'm nervous, she confessed. I've been here so often before. She turned her folder over in her hands. Well, everything's different now, Jonas reminded her. Even the nameplates on our bikes, Fiona laughed. During the night, the nameplate of each new 12 had been removed by the maintenance crew and replaced with the style that indicated citizen in training. I don't want to be late, she said hastily and started up the steps. If we finish at the same time, I'll ride home with you. Jonas nodded, waved to her, and headed around the building toward the annex, a small wing attached to the back. He certainly didn't want to be late for his first day of training either. The annex was very ordinary, its doors unremarkable. That means kind of just simple, nothing special about them. He reached for the heavy handle, then noticed a buzzer on the wall, so he buzzed instead. Yes, the voice came through a small speaker above the buzzer. It's, Jonas, I'm the new, come in. A click indicated that the door had been unlatched. The lobby was very small and contained only a desk at which a female attendant sat working on some papers. An attendant is kind of like a secretary or assistant. She looked up when he entered, then, to his surprise, she stood. It was a small thing, the standing, but no one had ever stood automatically to acknowledge Jonas's presence before. Welcome, receiver of memory, she said respectfully. Oh, please, he replied uncomfortably, call me Jonas. She smiled, pushed a button, and he heard a click that unlocked the door to her left. You may go right on in, she told him. Then she seemed to notice his discomfort and to realize its origin. No doors in the community were locked, ever. None that Jonas knew of anyway. The locks are simply to ensure the receiver's privacy because he needs concentration, she explained. It would be difficult if citizens wandered in looking for the Department of Bicycle Repair or something. Jonas laughed, relaxing a little. The woman seemed very friendly, and it was true. In fact, it was a joke throughout the community that the Department of Bicycle Repair, an unimportant little office, was relocated so often that no one ever knew where it was. There is nothing dangerous here, she told him. But she added, glancing at the wall clock, he doesn't like to be kept waiting. Jonas hurried through the door and found himself in a comfortably furnished living area. It was not unlike his own family unit's dwelling. Furniture was standard throughout the community, practical, sturdy, the function of each piece clearly defined, a bed for sleeping, a table for eating, a desk for studying. All those things were in this spacious room, though each was slightly different from those in his own dwelling. The fabrics on the upholstered chairs and sofa were slightly thicker and more luxurious. The table legs were not straight like those at his home, but slender and curved with a small carved decoration at the foot. The bed, in an alcove at the far end of the room, was draped with a splendid cloth embroidered over its entire surface with intricate designs. But the most conspicuous or most obvious difference was the books. In his own dwelling, there were the necessary reference volumes that each household contained, a dictionary, and the thick community volume which contained descriptions of every office, factory, building, and committee, and the book of rules, of course. The books in his own dwelling were the only books that Jonas had ever seen. He had never known that other books existed, but this room's walls were completely covered by bookcases filled, which reached to the ceiling. There must have been hundreds, perhaps thousands of books, their titles embossed in shiny letters. Jonas stared at them. He couldn't imagine what the thousands of pages contained. Could there be rules beyond the rules that govern the community? Could there be more descriptions of offices and factories and committees? He had only a second to look around because He was aware that the man sitting in a chair beside the table was watching him. Hastily, he moved forward, stood before the man, bowed slightly, and said, "I'm Jonas." "I know. Welcome, receiver of memory." Jonas recognized the man. He was the elder who had seemed separate from the others at the ceremony, though he was dressed in the same special clothing that only elders wore. Jonas looked self-consciously into the pale eyes that mirrored his own. "Sir, I apologize for my lack of understanding." He awaited, but the man did not give the standard accepting of apology response. After a moment, Jonas went on. "But I think," he corrected, reminding himself that if precision of language were ever to be important, it was certainly important now in the presence of this man, "that you are the receiver of memory. I was only selected yesterday. I'm not anything at all, not yet." The man looked at him thoughtfully, silently. It was a look that combined interest, curiosity, concern, and perhaps a little sympathy as well. Finally, he spoke. "Beginning today, at this moment, at least to me, you are the receiver." "I have been the receiver for a long time, a very, very long time. You can see that, can't you?" Jonas nodded. The man was wrinkled, and his eyes, though piercing in their usual lightness, seemed tired. The flesh around them was darkened into shadowed circles. "I can see that you are very old," Jonas responded with respect. The old were always given the highest respect. The man smiled. He touched the sagging flesh on his face with amusement. "I am not actually as old as I look," he told Jonas. "This job has aged me. I know I look as if I should be scheduled for release very soon, but actually, I have a good deal of time left. I was pleased, though, when you were selected. It took them a long time. The failure of the previous selection was 10 years ago, and my energy is starting to diminish. I need what strength I have remaining for your training. We have hard and painful work to do, you and I." "Please, sit down," he said, and gestured toward the nearby chair. Jonas lowered himself onto the soft cushioned seat. The man closed his eyes and continued speaking. "When I became a 12, I was selected, as you were. I was frightened, as I'm sure you are." He opened his eyes for a moment and peered at Jonas, who nodded. The eyes closed again. "I came to this very room to begin my training. It was such a long time ago. The previous receiver seemed just as old to me as I do to you. He was just as tired as I am today." He sat forward suddenly, opened his eyes, and said, "You may ask questions. I have so little experience in describing this process. It is forbidden to talk of it." "I know, sir. I have read the instructions," Jonas said, "so I may neglect to make things as clear as I should." The man chuckled. "My job is important and has enormous honor, but that does not mean I am perfect. And when I tried before to train a successor, I failed. Please ask any questions that will help you." In his mind, Jonas had questions. 1,000, 1,000,000 questions, as many questions as there were books lining the walls. But he did not ask one, not yet. The man sighed, seeming to put his thoughts in order. Then he spoke again. "Simply stated," he said, "although it's really not simple at all, my job is to transmit to you all the memories I have within me, memories of the past." "Sir," Jonas said tentatively, "I would be very interested to hear the story of your life and to listen to your memories." "I apologize for interrupting," he added quickly. The man waved his hand impatiently. "No apologies in this room. We haven't time." "Well," Jonas went on, uncomfortably aware that he might be interrupting again, "I am really interested. I don't mean that I'm not, but I don't exactly understand why it's important. I could do some adult job in the community, and in my recreation time I could come and listen to the stories from your childhood. I'd like that. Actually," he added, "I've done that already in the House of the Old. The old like to tell about their childhood, and it's always fun to listen to." The man shook his head. No, he said, "I'm not being clear. It's not my past, not my childhood that I must transmit to you. He leaned back, resting his head against the back of the upholstered chair. It's the memories of the whole world, he said with a sigh. Before you, before me, before the previous receiver, and generations before him. Jonas frowned. The whole world? He asked. I don't understand. Do you mean not just us, not just the community? Do you mean elsewhere too? He tried in his mind to grasp the concept. I'm sorry, sir. I don't understand exactly. Maybe I'm not smart enough. I don't know what you mean when you say the whole world or generations before him. I thought there was only us. I thought there was only now. There's much more. There's all that goes beyond, all that is elsewhere, and all that goes back and back and back. I received all of those when I was selected. And here in this room, all alone, I re-experience them again and again. It is how wisdom comes and how we shape our future. He rested for a moment, breathing deeply. I am so weighted with them, he said. Jonas felt a terrible concern for the man suddenly. It's as if the man paused, seeming to search his mind for the right words or description. It's like going downhill through deep snow on a sled, he said finally. At first it's exhilarating, the speed, the sharp, clear air, but then the snow accumulates, builds up on the runners, and you slow. You have to push hard to keep going, and he shook his head suddenly and peered at Jonas. That meant nothing to you, did it? He asked. Jonas was confused. I didn't understand it, sir. Of course you didn't. You don't know what snow is, do you? Jonas shook his head. Or a sled? Runners? No, sir, Jonas said. Downhill. That term means nothing to you? Nothing, sir. Well, it's a place to start. I'd been wondering how to begin. Move to the bed and lie face down. Remove your tunic first. Jonas did so a little apprehensively. Beneath his bare chest, he felt the soft folds of the magnificent cloth that covered the bed. He watched as the man rose and moved first to the wall where the speaker was. It was the same sort of speaker that occupied a place in every dwelling, but one thing about it was different. This one had a switch, which the man deftly snapped to the end that said, off. Jonas almost gasped aloud. To have the power to turn the speaker off? It was an astonishing thing. Then the man moved with surprising quickness to the corner where the bed was. He sat on a chair beside Jonas, which was motionless, waiting for what would happen next. Close your eyes, relax. This will not be painful. Jonas remembered that he was allowed, that he had even been encouraged to ask questions. What are you going to do, sir? He asked, hoping that his voice didn't betray his nervousness. I am going to transmit the memory of snow, the old man said, and placed his hands on Jonas's bare back. Okay, so first of all, everyone, you can say hi to my cat, Jet. He decided to interrupt us, so sorry if you were distracted by that. I got a little distracted too. In this chapter, we have Jonas meeting the receiver. We know the receiver of memory from the first time. So to receive means to take something, so to take memories. We found out in this chapter, and we'll come to understand it a little bit more as time goes on, that trying to think of the best way to explain this without giving things away. In the community that Jonas lives in, they do not have any memories of the past. They have memories of their own lives. So if you go to an old person, the elderly people, they remember their own lives. So they remember their childhoods. And so at first, when the receiver says, my job is to give you memories, Jonas is thinking, oh, I'd be honored to hear about your life. And the receiver, he says, no. That's not what I mean. I mean the memories of things of the past, of generations before us, the things that go back and back and back. You'll hear that phrase back and back and back throughout the novel. So what we come to find out in this chapter is that for whatever reason, the community has no knowledge or memories of the past. Like, we think of it as history. We learn about history in school from a young age. No matter what country you grow up in, what curriculum you have, you learn about history. So we learn about things that took place hundreds of years ago. We learn about things that took place thousands of years ago. And we learn about wars that took place. We learn about leaders. We learn about events in history that really transformed our world. And we can see that the community does not have that, which means there's only one person in the entire community that has knowledge of any of those memories, that history. And the only person is the receiver of memory. Once again, be thinking about why. Why would the community not allow or not want the community members, to know anything about the past? Okay, so even things like Jonas doesn't know what the word downhill means, which we can conclude, we can infer that there are no hills in the community. Everything is flat. We can conclude or infer that since Jonas does not know what snow is, not he's never seen it before, he does not know what it is, we can conclude or infer that the weather in the community does not have snow, and no one knows anything about snow. Once again, be thinking about why. Why would the community be created in a way that there would be no hills and that there would be no snow, for example? So be thinking about that. Why would the community be created that way? So we know that the receiver of memory, the main job is he contains all the memories of the past, not just of his own life, but of the world. He has all of that history, and he's the only one who knows about it, okay? So he's going to be transmitting a memory to Jonas, and the way he does that is placing his hands on his back in order to transmit that memory, to give that memory to Jonas, okay? We'll learn a lot more about this in the following chapter, but a couple more things I want you to notice. The receiver of memory, where he lives, it's called the annex, and there's a few things that are very different. A lot of things are the same as everyone else in the community, but a few things are different. We found out that every dwelling or home in the community has just the most basic furniture. Nothing excessive, nothing fancy. Everything has a purpose. Unlike our world where, especially if you have the money to do so, you're going to decorate your house, right? You're going to pick furniture that you like for your own taste. You're going to buy clothes that you like for your own taste. You're going to cut your hair in a way that you like, right? But in the community, everything has a purpose. There is nothing excessive, nothing that you get just because you want it because it looks nice. So every dwelling has a table for eating. It has a bed for sleeping. It has a desk for working. Everything has a purpose. The meals that they receive are given to them. So if you want a fancy meal, you don't get to cook your own meals. It is given to you. So everything is there for you. The receiver, however, Jonas notices a few things that are different. The table and furniture, for example, the legs are not just straight up and down. They maybe curve a little bit, and they have some designs in the wood. We find out that the chairs that have upholstery, the material is a little bit fancier. The cloth, the sheets that are on the bed, you can tell are thicker, and they're more like better quality. They're nicer. And then the thing that he notices most of all is he looks around, and in the receiver's dwelling, there are books all over the wall, just filled to the ceiling with books. We find out, once again, think about why, that in the dwelling, the only books that every dwelling has They have a book of rules because those are necessary. We can tell rules are very important in the community. They have a book that has information about every job, so it's information. And then, I don't want to mess this up. Oh, a dictionary. That's it. And they know precision of language is very important. So 3 books. They have never seen any other books ever. Jonas didn't even know other books existed. He thinks that's completely odd. He is amazed and stunned, and he wonders, maybe there's more rules that I don't know about. So his automatic thought when he looks at more books is more rules or more information. He has no idea what other books would be for. We know in our world we have libraries filled with books on every topic you can think of. People don't just read for information. A lot of people read just for pleasure, for fun, and they don't have that in the community. So think about, again, why that might be. And then last couple things. The receiver has a speaker, just like everyone else. In every dwelling, in every location, there's a speaker that the community elders are able to communicate with the citizens at any time of day ever. There's no off switch, no privacy, right? In the receiver's dwelling, 2 things. 1, he's allowed to turn the speaker off. And Jonas immediately thinks, that's a lot of power to be able to shut that off, to be able to have complete control, and to be able to shut out the leaders, the people in charge. You could just turn it off, right? Nobody has that. Second, the door in the receiver's dwelling has a lock on it. We find out that no other room or dwelling in the community that we know of has a lock. Think about how little privacy that means there is. Privacy is not something that seems to be valued. We even know things like mirrors are not there. So it's a very different community, okay? And then last thing, Jonas is treated differently. You notice when he walks in, the attendant or secretary, she stands up for him immediately. In case you don't know this, in many cultures and especially in generations past, when you stand up when someone walks in the room, that is a sign of respect. So in countries where there's royalty, kings and queens, it is customary for when they walk in the room, everybody stands up. It is a sign of respect for that person. In some cultures, and even in the US in generations or decades ago, when, for example, a woman would walk into the room, the gentlemen, the men would all stand up as a sign of respect and to be polite. So here's a 12-year-old kid that walks into the room, and she immediately, a full-grown adult, stands up for him. So imagine how odd that would be. And for Jonas, that's really hard because he doesn't see himself much differently, but he's reminded once again that his new job, his assignment as the receiver of memory, is highly regarded. There's a lot of respect and honor involved in that, okay? So I know that was a lot of information in that chapter. This was a longer video, but it's very important that you understand everything in there. I'm sure I missed some things. We'll learn more, of course, as the chapters go on, but if you have any questions, please comment or email me and we can go ahead and talk about it or message back and forth, okay? All right, guys, I will talk to you soon. Okay, bye.